question. It's a long question, but I feel it's important to read it so you can get a feel for what the person is actually talking about. I think it will probably resonate with quite a few spiritual seekers I've met over the years. Dear Kim, I hope you don't mind me reaching out with some personal questions and thoughts. Throughout my life, I struggled with chronic lethargy and a lack of motivation. These issues have led to repeated failures in my work, and as a result, I often find myself burdened with feelings of shame and inadequacy, especially in the eyes of those around me. Sadly, my failures have affected not just me, but also my family, who now live in poverty and disgrace. Although I love my family, I also find their presence overwhelming and burdensome at times. The choices I made for their sake have often left me feeling trapped and exhausted. As I mentioned, I've been afflicted by deep lethargy since childhood, and even maintaining focus on my own tasks while being mindful of my family is a source of great suffering for me. In many ways, my life has mirrored the repeated failures I saw in my parents. Now in my 40s, I finally sought psychiatric help, which has provided some relief. However, financial struggles are making even that difficult to maintain. Believing that these repeated patterns might be karmic, I turned to decrees in the hope of raising my consciousness and overcoming this cycle. But to be honest, the decrees you've shared feel disconnected from my reality, as if they belong to another world. I'm not even aiming for ascension at this point. I simply want to break free from this painful cycle that defines my life. Yet the decrees don't resonate with me, and the idea that using decrees as a solution is merely a linear attachment leaves me feeling even more disheartened. The teachings of the Ascended Masters also no longer feel helpful. I feel trapped on all sides. The Masters often say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and that no one would be drawn to their teachings unless their consciousness was prepared. And yes, I do love reading their discourses, but the sad truth is they provide no real help in my current life situation. What should I do? As a result of reading the teachings of the Ascended Masters, I've lost all belief in a wish-granting God. I've also lost hope in practices like The Secret and other manifesting techniques. The decrees don't reach my heart, and passionately clinging to them feels like just another form of linear obsession. I feel completely stuck. Am I simply doomed to suffer as a result of my wrong choices? Are we merely bait cast into this world by the I Am Presence to collect data and experience? In the teachings of the Ascended Masters, I don't see compassion or love, but rather a chilling detachment that feels inhuman. This is not merely a request for your opinion. I would truly like to know, what would the Ascended Masters say to someone like me? Of course, they do not speak directly to me, and frankly, I no longer want to hear the same tired phrase repeated across the spiritual community, anyone can do it. Thank you for reading this. I write not out of anger, but out of a deep confusion and a longing for clarity and peace. Well, I have, of course, seen this before. I have met people before who had very similar issues, where even from early childhood, it's like they can't really engage in life. There's nothing that really excites them, engages them. There's nothing they really want to do or experience. And you can say, I mean, the person is asking, am I simply doomed to suffer as a result of my wrong choices? Well, you are doomed to suffer if you don't change something, right? What I explain throughout my life, or throughout my teachings, my videos, is that your life is a process, or your life is the product of your current psychology. So if you don't change the psychology, you are doomed to suffer. You will continue to be in the same state of consciousness for the rest of your life. I mean, you're in your 40s. That should be clear by now, right? So what I would say is, you have got to do something you have not done so far. If you keep doing the same thing, you're going to continue to suffer the way you're doing now. So what can you do? Well, what I would say here is that this phenomenon, that there are people who can engage in life, even from childhood, in my view, it comes from only one thing. You experienced a very severe trauma in a past life. It could be a recent past life, it could be a more remote one. But just look at history here. Look at the history of the last 100 years. Look how many wars. Imagine you were alive during the Second World War. You might have been a soldier. You might have been a civilian. Your city might have burned down. Your house was bombed. All kinds of atrocities. You could have lived in poverty, died in poverty, starved to death. All kinds of atrocities that could have happened to you in your last lifetime. And so when you have this very, very severe trauma in a past life, you come into this lifetime and you haven't, in many cases, had time to heal. And so you come in with this really, it's not even a belief, it's just a sense that, and it's probably hard to even put words on it, I'm realizing, it's just a sense that there's nothing you want to do on earth. There's nothing that engages you. It's just, you just want to get away from it. I basically just want to detach from life and crawl into a hole and not have to do anything. Because the way the person describes having to work and deal with a family, it's like everything is a burden. And that's typical for trauma. If you're really traumatized, right? It's because you are so overwhelmed that you're only focused on yourself. And anything that pulls you is just overwhelming to you. And that's why dealing with everyday life, dealing with a job and a family, it's too much, it's overwhelming. And so that's why I'm saying that in severe cases like this, the only thing I could suggest here is you need to shift your life so that whatever you can do, you make it the main focus on your life to heal this trauma, to expose it, to come to see it, and deal with it. And, I've seen this before also, that people find the teachings of the Ascended Masters, and for a while it seems like it helps them, but then it's like, there's something, And the reason for this is, again, if the trauma is so severe, you can't really use any spiritual techniques. So I don't know what you can do in your practical situation, but I would suggest that you look at your situation and see what can you change so that you make this an absolute priority to heal this trauma. What options do you have? I mean, could you commit yourself to a mental institution? Is that a possibility? Could you seek help from somewhere to deal with trauma? I mean, not just general psychology, but seek to deal with very, very severe trauma. And there are some forms of therapy. There's something called EMDR that I have tried myself. There is various forms of hypnotherapy where you're not really hypnotized, but it takes you back to situations from the past that I've also used. And there are other techniques out there. So I would say, I mean, don't cling to the teachings of the Ascended Masters if they don't help you. Look for something else. And don't try to force yourself to do decrees and invocations. Look for something else. But you've got to try something you haven't tried before, because otherwise you are doomed to continue to suffer this way the rest of your life. And it's not because, am I simply doomed to suffer as a result of my wrong choices? No, it's not your wrong choices. You were exposed to trauma. It wasn't something you chose. Some external force, whatever it was, exposed you to this trauma. There was nothing you did wrong. There was nothing you could have done differently. Most people would have responded the same way to this kind of severe trauma. So you simply have to decide, will you accept that there's nothing you can do about it, or will you shift and accept there is something that can be done about this, but you need help. You need help to make this possible. And what can you then do to get this kind of help? Now, I know you say you can't engage in Ascended Masters, but there is a book given by the Masters called Healing Your Spiritual Traumas. And so it is a possibility to at least try and see that book. I also have my whole playlist about avatar psychology, where I also talk about these very deep traumas that we received in a past life, often when we first came to Earth. So I would suggest you watch all of those videos and see if there's anything there that clicks, that sort of helps you shift the way you look at this. you know, this is not merely a quest for your opinion. I would truly like to know, what would the Ascended Master say to someone like me? Well, they would say, you've got to do something you haven't done before. And then a person says, of course they do not speak directly to me. Well, how do you know? Would you even be able to hear them? Because what happens with the trauma is that, let's put it this way. You're exposed to a very dramatic, very traumatic situation. It's overwhelming. Basically, it's, I can't live with this. I can't deal with this psychologically. Psychologically, I can't deal with this. And basically what this person is describing, psychologically, I can't deal with life. So, of course, you're still in a physical body, you're still alive, you still have to deal with life. So you find some kind of way by creating these subconscious selves so you can have some sense of equilibrium, some sense that you have your life under control. But you do this by creating this worldview that life is a certain way. And now, in order to maintain this very fragile sense of equilibrium, you're constantly projecting. You're projecting out, projecting out. This is how life is. This is how life must be. And this means you can't hear the Ascended Masters. I can guarantee you, they are talking to you. They want to help you. They want to give you some little impulse that you can hear. But if you are constantly projecting through these subconscious selves, they are forming a perception filter, and they are not letting anything in. It's like the censors in communist societies that are censoring books, or you have seen these redacted files where a lot of it is wiped out with black ink, and so that's how your subconscious selves are. You can't hear the Ascended Masters unless you can step outside of these cells, as I say, the conscious you can do, and be neutral, and then you might be able to hear something. I'm not saying this to put another burden on you. I'm just trying to say that you know, in the teachings of the Ascended Masters, I don't see compassion or love, but rather a chilling detachment that feels inhuman. But are you sure that you can experience compassion and love? Or are your subconscious selves blocking it out? And a chilling detachment that feels inhuman, yes, but how are you going to overcome your trauma unless you detach from the trauma? Are you not longing to feel detached from the trauma? I'm just throwing these things out there, trying to help you shift your mind, because you know, I have met people over the years that were so deeply traumatized that well, I couldn't see how to help them, but of course it's my limitations. I haven't dealt with that many traumatized people. But I have met people that seemed like nothing could really help them. But the reason why nothing could help them was there was something they weren't willing to look at. There was something they weren't willing to question. That's what I'm saying. You have this fragile sense of equilibrium, having your life under control. And if you're not willing to question that, you can't receive that new idea that will help you shift the way you look at yourself and the situation. I mean, something has to change, or you are doomed to suffer as a result, not of your wrong choices, but your current state of consciousness. So, I don't know. I don't know what else I can say here. You know, you got to watch here that basically, yes, basically what I would say is that we all human beings, we all have these mechanisms in our psychology that block our progress. You could call it a psychological catch-22 or an enigma that seems to be unsolvable. And so we can create these things where we have a certain very strong opinion that we're very attached to, and it blocks us from seeing what we need to see. For example, frankly, I no longer want to hear the same tired phrase repeated across the spiritual community, anyone can do it. Right, but how are you then going to change if you don't realize that your psychology is no different from the psychology of other people? You maybe have received a more severe trauma, and it may be much more difficult for you to resolve psychology. But unless you realize that it can be done because your psychology isn't different, it's what I explain in so many of my videos is, the core of your being is this conscious you. And it has the ability to step outside of your outer personality. And it's in the outer personality, the subconscious self, that your trauma is centered. The conscious you is not traumatized. There was a subconscious self that you created in response to a situation. But it's only the subconscious self that suffers. So you have the ability to step outside. Now, the stronger that subconscious self is, the stronger the trauma is, the more it pulls on the conscious you, the harder it is to step outside. But what I'm saying is that the basic mechanism of resolving psychology is that the conscious you comes to see that the problem is just in a subconscious self and it isn't real. And once you have experienced just a glimpse of being outside the self and realizing it's just the self, then you can shift your perspective and start working on it. And that's why I'm saying this is just the simple mechanism for resolving psychology. And it's really the only way to resolve psychology. You could say traditional talk therapy is about what? You let the patient talk until the conscious you steps outside a particular subconscious self and sees it from the outside. Now, traditional therapy, they often wait very long time and hope this happens spontaneously. There are other forms of therapy, I said, where they do much more to bring this about in a shorter time frame. And so, but it's the same mechanism. Something in you shifts, so you suddenly, instead of being inside the self looking out, you are outside the self looking at the self, and you're saying, oh, it's not me. There's really no magic here. But it is an almost magical process. Once you understand this, that the subconscious you has not become the selves that it created as a response to a trauma.